Global Broadcasting Networks presents Military Mom Talk Radio. We know behind every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine is the family supporting them. With over 200 episodes in 17 countries, over 5 seasons, with 3 million monthly listeners, we are radio strong. Now here are your hosts, Sandra, Beck, and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I've got such a great show today with my partner in crime, Robin Boyd. We're back together again. We've been apart, Robin, for so many weeks.
I know. We have to take sabbaticals every so often, and it just brings the love back, that's all.
It does, because I get all snarky about Robin's personal life, and, then she's all comforting about my train wreck life, which then makes me get guilt and shame, and we just spiral down until we come back together.
We are there to hold each other up, aren't we?
It is. Partnership is a great thing. And we're going to be talking today with Chris Nielson, and he is a transformational coach, an awakening coach. He's a really neat guy, Robin. You were reading his blog recently, and I'd like to open the conversation with that. But Rob, I'm going to put the mic over to you because you're more familiar with the blog than I am.
Well, I am, and before we start on all the questioning, I'd love to just say hi to Chris, and thank you for being here. We're so glad to meet you and get a little more information about you. Where have you been to get to this point in your life right now?
Hello, Robin and Sandra. Thanks for having me. Where have I been in my life?
Where have you been? And
where have you been all
here?
of our lives, Chris? Really, that's the question.
I've been a lot of places. So, I think my whole life journey has taken me here, the good and the bad and all the lessons from that. And it's taken me to a pretty beautiful place today. But I think a lot of the lessons, the best lessons that actually I can share with other people came through a lot of misery.
I was just going to say, so many times our experiences build our character. Do you feel that when you were a young man, maybe just starting out in careers and finding your identity, did you ever think that you would be then advising? Was coaching always something that you felt was inherent in you?
No, I didn't feel like I was coaching. I actually loved to play more than coach. I think as a kid, I dreamed of being a professional basketball player. And then that dream turned into professional baseball when I was much better at it. And I played a year of college baseball, studied high performance, and hurt my shoulder that first year in baseball. And from there, I played other sports like tennis and then wanted to be really good in that. But started coaching a little tennis at that time, and that's probably the first coaching I did. And I enjoyed it, but I liked playing much better back then.
I think so many times you have to be in the pits, if you will, and then it gives you that basis to be able to ask the good questions and to be able to sort of feel where someone else is coming from, and that makes that relationship begin more solid. One of the things that what Sandra was just talking about, we're talking many times about parenting on our show, and there are many times I think every parent has said, "Oh my God, am I just completely off base here? Am I totally a terrible parent?" Sometimes we have a very difficult time understanding whether or not we're getting it right. And one of the blogs that I read that you wrote was talking about sort of setting your kids up with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that. I think we're so anxious to praise our kids, to tell them that they're wonderful, talk about, really inflating their egos so that they're going to feel really good about themselves. That's sort of intuitive, I think, but sometimes that might not be the best approach in bracing our kids for inner strength. Is that what I learned from your blog?
Yeah, that for sure. One of the blogs, that was the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, was really a life changer for me. And I don't know, are you guys familiar with the book?
I know of her, but I'm afraid I haven't read that book.
Okay, powerful work. I highly recommend it to anyone, parents, relationships, whatever you're working on in business. In the book, I realized when I read the book that I'd cursed my daughter. my daughter Michaela, and here was the curse. You're smart, intelligent, beautiful, you can do whatever you want. And that was, unfortunately, was a label that she didn't want to lose. And some kids stop trying really hard because they don't want to lose this label. When you tell them they're great, if they risk something, they can potentially lose that label. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so one of the things that we did, Carol Dweck did in a simple experiment, she took 2 groups and she gave them the same simple test. One group, she said, wow, you did really well on the test, you must be very smart. The other group, she said, wow, you did really well on the test, you must have worked hard. And the group, when given the choice to do the same easy test again or hard test, the group that was told they were smart chose to do the same easy test again. The group they were told they worked hard said, why would we want to do the easy test again? Give us the harder and harder test. So they wanted harder and harder tests.
That's really fascinating. I think it's so many times the first thing out of your mouth, and then you say, oh, wow, I wish I hadn't said it that way. You feel the burden of everything that comes out of your mouth is going to be your child's future, that you're going to, you're creating this mold that if you do it wrong the first time, it's going to be horrible to try to fix. It is difficult to try to feel that confidence as a parent. Sandra, you must be facing a lot of these kinds of quandaries. You've got teenagers.
I do. I have a preteen and a teenage boy, both high achievers. And, it's interesting, Chris, in my household, I grew up in a military family, obviously, and, have a lot of background with that. And I always go back to this Israeli fighter pilot study that I remember learning years ago. And they had, a bunch of different pilots, and they randomly assigned these pilots grades after having them do a performance drill. And, the ones who were not praised a lot and did rather poorly, they showed a great improvement in the next set of performance drills. Those who cruised through it got the best grades and a lot of praise. They actually reduced their performance, and those somewhere in the middle, they actually showed the greatest improvement. Those who, they weren't the lowest, they weren't the highest, but they were, given a moderate amount of praise and inspired to do their best, even though the performance outcomes were actually random. They were randomized. Whether the pilot did poorly or great, they still were put into these control groups. And I never forgot that story. I learned it in business school, 20 years ago at Northwestern. And I hark back to that when I look at my boys, because I'm like, where's that sweet spot of praise where you praise them enough to keep them going, but you don't overinflate them so they go in with a big fat ego and blow the test or blow the game. But you also, human beings are fluid. And so, when I got a 6'2", size 15.5 foot 14-year-old. Yeah. He's like a giant exploded golden retriever puppy. And he's every bit the 14-year-old boy inside, but the big giant man on the outside. And there's so many conditions that make that a fluid arrangement. Where's the sweet spot?
That's a great question, and one of my favorite coaches that was talking about this well before Carol Dweck was Coach John Wooden of the UCLA Bruins, and he really coached with a growth mindset attitude. They didn't talk about how we're going to win the game. They talked about the effort they were going to put in, and they put in a lot of effort at practice, and that's the thing. You can control a child. A child can control his effort. A player can control their effort. And that's the big difference in praising. You can praise all you want on effort. That doesn't get a kid's head blown up and big. If you praise them on how smart they are, imagine you guys have a label on your chest, and your listeners can as well, a label that says smart. So then you get a task that may be just a little above your level of ability and in front of other people. Do you want to risk your label by taking on that task, or do you want to just say, yeah, I'm good? That's okay for me. What I talk to parents about a lot with this is in the fixed growth mindset. I use a tightrope example in it. If a fixed mindset kid, someone who's praised a lot, they're a great athlete, you're a natural, you're whatever they're saying to them, all those things actually make it more difficult for that child to excel. And where a kid was saying, oh, wait, I love how hard work you put in, I love the work you put in, that child's more likely to excel. And so I use this example. So a kid is getting ready to learn how to tightrope walk for the first time. the fixed mindset teenager or preteen walks up to the tightrope, looks at it and goes, they know they're going to fall. They're going to risk their label. And they said, I'm too cool for that. I don't need to walk on your tightrope. And if they're forced out there, it kind of hurts a little bit. And they finally go, okay, fine, I'll do it. And they step out on the tightrope and they fall. And the net hurts and they go, I'm done. I'm out of here. That's enough. The growth mindset kid steps out on the tightrope. He falls into the net. This net is awesome. Climbs up the ladder again, falls again and again and again and again and again. And 1,000 falls later, you walk in the room and you see this kid going back and forth across the tightrope. And you go, wow, you're a natural.
And right away, that gives them that so many times we're trying so hard to create that confidence. Do you feel that you saw that result with your daughter? You have one daughter?
Just one daughter, yeah. And for her, actually, unfortunately in this situation, I would say again that I cursed her, and that was probably part of the journey about 10 years ago plus, where I started a joyful parenting program. I go, there's a better way to do it. I started intensively research into it. Before that, I had a psychology background, a background in sports high performance, but I started to study it tremendously and try to figure things that would work better. And because of a difficulty with her mother and I, there was a lot of things that I could do and couldn't do. And it started to be that really I had to work on myself because I also had that fixed mindset in me. I didn't want to fail publicly.
Mm-hmm. Chris, we've got a break coming up, and on the other side of the break, I have a feeling that you and Sandra have many common ground. We're talking about whether you are co-parenting or having two households for your children. When we come back, maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Today we're with Chris Nielson. That's Chris, ChrisNielson.com. We'll be back in a moment, so stay tuned. We've got lots more ahead. Stay with us on Military Mom Talk Radio.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 10, 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward, with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Did you know 1/3 of the population suffers from bad breath? Several years ago, a New York City doorman was actually suspended from work because people were complaining about his bad breath. Other words for foul-smelling breath are halitosis and ozostomia. So, what are common causes of ozostomia? Coffee is a problem because it's very acidic and bacteria reproduce faster in an acid environment. Candy and gum contain sugar, which is also a problem because sugar feeds the bacteria that cause bad breath. Alcohol is another culprit. What's another name for cheap wine? Plonk, slip slop, or stinky bus.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Hey, Military Moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we're visiting with Coach Chris Nielson, and we're talking about mindset, how to develop a success mindset in our kids. And, that comes from, I think, you first, Chris. I know I'm from a family of achievers and everybody was go, 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 but I was way down on the pecking order. So in order to keep up with my brothers and sisters, I had to work harder. So, I was praised a lot more for my effort than I was for my innate gifts, if you will. It was more about like, wow, she really tries to keep up with her brothers. I'd be a millionaire if I had $1 for every time somebody said that. But I see in my own boys, I see my younger one who's really tiny. He's like 70 pounds, even though they're only a couple years apart. It's like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger and twins. Wow. They couldn't be any different. And my little guy, he fights like a dog to keep up. And I do praise him more for what he tries to do or how hard he works. And I don't praise my older one. I'm always like, well, you're tall, you're good looking, you're smart. And I didn't realize like I'm doing the same thing that my parents did to my older brothers and sisters. Is that just part of our family dynamic?
Well, I think it's what I share with a lot of parents is that we're all been programmed, and we've been programmed by our parents, well-meaning parents. And what I say to parents too, whenever I work with them, is everyone's doing the best they can with what they currently know. So be really nice to yourself. Demonstrate that for your kids. And if you need work on it because it's so worth working on. But so we've got these programs going. And what I tell parents as well, the society, this world is programming us every single day. It's poking holes in you. I think people are innately worthy. But the society says you're not worthy, you're not enough, so you go buy stuff that you don't need. And because of the program, so whatever program your parents take on and think is the right program, that's what they'll share with you. And it does vary with, firstborn to secondborn or last. And what they've found in studies actually with kids that excel, oftentimes it's the youngest that excel the most.
And I just sat here going, see, the middle gets ignored again because you got the first one. I got the last one.
That's right.
Everybody just forgets about the middle. But there is something to be said about that. And, Chris, when you talked about mindset being, kind of conditioned, by our parents, I mean, we can only know what we know. We can only teach what we know. We can't teach what we don't know and what we didn't experience. When you're in a co-parenting situation, which is very prevalent in our military family, it's very prevalent in our society as a whole, it really, really adds a delightful, rotten parenting dimension when you've got competing mindsets. Like, I come from a mindset of do your best. I came from a little farming community, and everybody in my family went to college. We've all been very, very successful. I got a NASA rocket scientist brother because of hard work, because of belief in yourself, all these things. And then I married into a family and obviously divorced out of a family whose mindset was, what, don't stick your neck out. Like, why would you volunteer? Why would you risk something? Because you're probably going to fail. And if you don't get too up and excited about him, because I drove him bananas, Chris. I was like, just like Little Mary Sunshine blew up in there. And, you've got these two competing mindsets of don't stretch, don't reach, don't stick your neck out. And you know what? If you don't get too excited, you'll never get too upset. And those two competing mindsets were like, it was more like a big boulder crushing a little boulder. It wasn't like two boulders hitting each other. But it's been tough on my kids to navigate those two mindsets.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly difficult for kids. Most kids want to see their parents be happy and together. And even parents that are together sometimes get them getting on the same page. Some of the biggest fights are over how to parent the kids. Sure. Because we both rarely are people programmed in the same way going, this is what's best. And so we have disagreements on that. And kids, it's very difficult when you get two messages coming at them. Which do you listen to? I remember when my daughter's mother would come to pick her up, and we'd be getting along great. We'd be playing. We were amazingly connected. And about 15 minutes, half hour before she knew her mom was arrived, she'd start to push me away.
Yep.
Yeah. So start to separate it. So I was lucky enough to have two parents that are still together, and they have their faults and flaws, but my mom was amazing. And, just to touch on that a little bit, my mom is the reason why I'm here today, and the reason why I just love helping. She was a high school counselor, and I was at my 20-year reunion. And people came up to me and said, your mom saved my life. Your mom is the reason why I graduated. I love your mom. A dozen people. I actually invited my mom to that reunion so they got to say it to her directly. But her sunshine eyes just filled me with love my entire life. And she just gave. And it feels now to me, I get so much joy about helping other people. So I wish I would have known, I wish I would have taken that love and not been so kind of damaged in my programming myself when I was with Michaela's mother, so I could have been a better co-parent at that time myself.
Well, you know what I look at, I've been co-parenting for 14 years now, same kids, same dad. You get better with it. And you learn as you go. And kids are also resilient. Like, my parents also stayed together. My mom drew her last breath laying next to my dad, after 60 years. So, it's not like I didn't have good parenting models to begin with. And to be fair, when the kids go to school, they have mindsets that they learn from their friends. They have the teacher's mindset. They might have a church or a religious or a temple's mindset to deal with. So it's not like it's the end of the world if parents have different mindsets. I used to get really worried about that because we had opposing religions, we had opposing politics, I don't know even how we got together, but there was everything that you could oppose, was opposing. But the kids also recognize, like, my parents didn't agree on everything. And yeah, they agreed on most important things. But, the fact of the matter was we knew what mom thought, we knew what dad thought, and you just dealt with it, because that's also life, Chris. You don't go to school and your teacher's the same as your parent.
Right. No, you say it very well, and it's obviously true. What I get at is where it gets trouble is when you have, like, you are very comfortable with other people having a different mindset, as am I. But if one parent says this is the way it is and the other isn't acceptable, that changes the whole dynamic. And that's a lot of what I went through.
That's my spaghetti theory. Like, I'm a mom who, as raising these boys, would use physical, because I studied physics, and I'm a tech person by background. That's my spaghetti theory. And I would show the kids, I would take a skinny piece of spaghetti and I say, look, if your beliefs are really rigid, and I have a cooked piece and a plain piece, and, when you bend it, you'll see the spaghetti will snap and shatter. And the other, the cooked spaghetti, the flexible spaghetti, will be able to wrap around the meatball. It's like stupid things I would do at dinner with the kids.
Those are stupid things. Those are beautiful things. That's an amazing parenting right there. And if I could give every child a flexible mindset, it is the people, like you said, people crack when they're that inflexible. The philosophies in yoga talk about a bendable, flexible body, also a bendable, flexible mind. If your mind isn't flexible, you're going to get in arguments all the time. You're going to have disagreements and difficulty. You created an incredible example. I'll use that in the future to help share with people.
I hope so, because there's so many things. Like the other one that I love, Chris, and like, I am a very free spirit. I think you can tell that. Robin knows that. She usually has to rein me in. But in my relationship with the kid's dad, there was this issue called sock wars. There was an issue of socks going back and forth. And my socks were never as clean as the other house's socks. And, my kids start to get sideways over these stupid socks. Robin, you know this story.
Oh, yes.
So I went to the store and I bought a brand new pair of sports socks, the kind with the little lines, the boy socks. Yeah. And I put them on the kitchen floor, and I was bringing the kids their breakfast one morning, and we're like, hey, and they're like, Mom, the socks are on the floor. Like, oh. And, I took the pitcher of orange juice and I poured it on the socks, and we went and sat down, and they were freaked out. They're like, and I'm like, they're socks. They can get dirty. We can spill. We can have an accident. They're socks. And then I went to the bag, and I'm like, we can either wash these or we can buy a new pair of socks. Like, it is okay. Things happen. Things break. Things get dirty. And that, that rigidity that we talk about with the spaghetti, it's there's so many household things you can just pick up and go, things break.
That is beautiful, Sandra. That's another incredible piece of parenting, because kids get stuck in that program and think this is the only way to go, just as parents are actually stuck in their program and thinking this is the only way to do it. And, a lot of what, it's, what did you say, break? Often I say this to parents. It is lucky if your kids break your favorite thing. And here's how it's lucky. You get to clearly show to them that they are way more important than your favorite thing.
Right.
Because I had this happen the other day. I was working with actually a psychologist and doing a coaching session with her. And her young son, preteen, was with his best friend, and he said to his mom, you love your patients, care way more about your patients than you do me. And she couldn't believe he would say this, and said, no, that's not true. And she asked his friend, and his friend said, yeah, you totally care way more about your patients than you do him. And so, wasn't true at all. She totally loved him, but he didn't know it. And when we make things so important or other people so important, just because we feel that complete love for our kids inside doesn't mean they feel it themselves. And so one of the big things I share with parents, let your kids know that they're way more important than anything you have. Your sock example is so wonderful, and you don't need to get upset by a sock or something breaking.
I think the other thing, too, with parenting is that you do have to let children know that you care about their opinion, to listen to them. And they could be a toddler that is babbling, and you're going to sit there and listen so intently, or they could be 14 or 15 and talking about something that maybe you clearly aren't understanding, but the fact that you're listening is so important because it gives them value. It's giving them the self-worth that they're realizing, wow, Mom is really listening to me. I must really have a voice. I must have something to say. Chris, we've got
said.
We've got a break right here coming up. On the other side of the break, I'd love to bring the conversation into talking about an environment of inevitable success, because, of course, we want our children to learn how they themselves can be successful. So stay tuned. Get comfortable. We'll be right back with more with Chris Nielson. We've got lots more ahead. Stay with us on Military Mom Talk Radio.
It's words you never heard.
Derek Thompson, co-founder of the Save the Elephant Foundation, was taking a rescued elephant named Kamla for a walk along the river. As they were walking, Derek decided to stop and take a dip in the water. But when he called to Kamla, who was waiting on the shore, the elephant thought he was in trouble and came running to his rescue. Kamla charged through the water, sheltering him with her body and offering her trunk for him to hold on to. What's another word for a trained elephant? A kunki. Elephant trainers in Asia are known as mahouts. And the padded seat or saddle used to ride on an elephant is called a howdah. Kamla and her mother, Bai Tui, are among the 70 elephants the foundation has rescued since its inception.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything. We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio. Hi,
Hi, everyone. We are so glad you're with us. Oh, San, you were, I wasn't sure.
It's like Pavlov's dog over here. 8 years of doing this. I open, Robin closes, and I'm like, and then Robin's working.
I know. I'm so sorry. We are having a wonderful conversation, the both of us, whoever speaks first. Today, our guest is Chris Nielson, and if you want to see more about Chris, visit Chris Nielson, and it's ChrisNielson.com. Really fascinating topic here today. We're talking all about not only the relationship that we have with our children, but I also want to talk a little bit, Chris. I've seen you speak of an environment of inevitable success. We want our children to be successful. We want them to learn how they themselves can bring themselves to success. But I'd love to know what you see as inevitable success, and then we can look at what that environment looks like.
Sure. I mean, it's actually one of my favorite topics, and it is a pretty big topic. Mm-hmm. But what I looked at is how can I looked for all kinds of ways I could help my own relationship with my daughter and then help her succeed. And then I looked at even for myself, how can I succeed at various things? And then I looked at family life. How could I help families succeed in a way that was connecting? And what I looked at is a lot of kids are actually, some of them are succeeding, but they're actually failing. And what I mean by that is they're very fragile. I was an honor student. I was a student athlete of the year. I was captain of the basketball team on a state championship baseball team. Yet when I was 17, I went on a joy ride in the middle of winter with my buddy Jeff and Jared. And we were sliding around a lake, which they didn't want to go on, a frozen lake. And there were 2 empty fish houses, and I was at the far side of the lake, and I gunned it. And I looked up, and I was headed right towards one of the fish houses. I turned left and right, nothing. Brakes left, right, nothing. Bam! I hit the fish house. Wheel went into the hole. Water on the windshield. They got out so fast, and they're screaming at me to get out. But where am I? My seatbelt was still buckled. My head was on the steering wheel as the ice is creaking and cracking, and they're screaming at me. In that moment, the ice, the cold water, felt like it would be warmer than my father's eyes. This is a
Sorry,
kid.
I don't mean to be laugh at the end.
No, please laugh. I can laugh at it now. And I didn't call my dad. I called a family friend. The second tow truck, the first tow truck wouldn't come out on the ice. Second tow truck came out far enough on the ice to hook up the Jeep. And a good thing, it was one of those old Jeeps back in 1984, and it wasn't very damaged. But what I look at it is kids are fragile these days. Even the kids getting straight A's, even the kids that are out starting because of the messages of society. So how can I, this is one of the things that propelled me, this insight into me. If I was that fragile then with so much going for me, what are kids fragile today? When they're 24/7, they're getting messages they're not good enough. Parents are putting incredible pressure on them, especially in certain communities. So how do you create an environment of inevitable success? One, you take failure off the table. And I was listening to this other high-performance expert, and he said, in our house, there is no failure. We love to succeed, but we also love to learn. So we're either succeeding or learning, and we love to learn. So if you can take failure off the table, it's an amazing thing. Going back to that tightrope example, I say there's parents that are, we know the helicopter parent, but here's 2 different ones that I use. You're a net parent or you're a concrete parent. And so your kid falls off the tightrope. Does they have a nice net they can collect themselves in and crawl up the ladder and do it again and again and fall in your net? Or are you a concrete parent? When they land and fail, you go, what were you thinking? What were you doing? Why did you do that? And they know they can't fail around you. It just makes them walk on pins and needles. So if you can create a place where they can fail freely and learn that failure leads to success. So I do a thing called Unleash the Hero Within into schools. I love taking it into schools. And one of the stories I tell in there is the Babe Ruth story. Are you guys familiar with Babe Ruth?
Sure.
Yeah. Salt and the Swat, king of home runs in baseball a long time ago. He had 714 home runs. Any guess on his number of strikeouts?
Oh, probably twice that, maybe.
Right, good guess. Almost 1,330. Wow. He was also at the time the king of strikeouts. And sometimes baseball writers would write striking out is a shameful act, but not to Babe Ruth. He swung, and because he was willing to fail 1,330 times, he became the king of home runs. Not the king of strikeouts. He's not known for that, but he was also that as well. Michael Jordan, I fail over and over again. That is why I succeeded. If you want to really succeed, fail and create a safe net under your kids so they can fall and try again, make it an experiment, because there's no failure in an experiment. So if you create that environment of inevitable success for your kids, they will excel with more joy and less stress for you and them than all. So it's an amazing thing to do, and that's just a little touch on it. If you guys have any questions, I love talking about it.
It's a wonderful topic, because I think there again, helping your children have that analytical mind is so important as they're developing. One of the things that I used to do with my kids, and Sandra has heard me tell this a number of times, we would be watching a television show. It might be one of their kid shows back in the day when it was Nickelodeon or whatever the shows were back then. I'd always mute the commercial, and I'd say, what do you think is going to happen next? And we would talk, and we would sort of predict, or what do you think if the protagonist does this, what do you think is going to happen? What if the child that's being the bully, what if they don't do this? What do you think would happen? How can the child handle this? And so many times we would get them talking and thinking, and then they would say, oh, I think they should be, the other child shouldn't be doing this. It was giving them the opportunity to analyze what the circumstance was, sort of in an objective way, giving them that sort of peek into what they could do if they were ever in that situation.
That's beautiful. Again, that's a beautiful example of parenting, and I encourage even I did that a little bit with my daughter as well. And I also encourage even watching the commercials and saying, what are they trying to sell you? Yeah. Or how are they looking to get you to feel? Because they're actually looking to get you to feel bad about yourself. So you go want what they have or seemingly associate that they have.
Right. It's like those frozen dinners full of garbage, but you're the best mom ever. If you open a box and put
that's right.
a plastic thing in the oven, you rock.
Yeah.
See, and I think I'm maybe, I don't know how you were, Chris, but Robin had a her family was all together, and I'm out here in California, and my family's all in the Upper East Coast, and where we do fall through the ice and everybody laughs. There's a Jeep up our lake. I'm just saying we have nothing to do with it, so far as the police know. But one of the things that my kids had the luxury of, and I know this sounds weird because now on the hindsight I see it's a luxury, they got to see me fail a lot. They got to see me fail in marriage. They got to see me fail in company. They've seen me fail in sports because, when you're a mom and you've got two little kids trying to make it in California on your own and you're sole supporting, you take your kids everywhere. So my kids have gone to meetings with me. They've seen me succeed and fail. And I don't use the word fail in my household either, Chris. I don't use the word fail and I don't use the word wrong, because those two things, like, they still stick in my craw today. Like, I hear my sister going, hey, you're wrong, or my brother's like, fail. So I don't like those words, and I use two different words. I'm just going to give people that opportunity. I use the word outcome. I'm like, well, what was get the outcome you wanted? Like, I got an F, Mom. You didn't get the outcome you wanted, didn't you? Like, what are we going to do different? Because anything we do gets an outcome. It's some are better than others, but you can work your tail off and still have an outcome you didn't want. Doesn't make you a failure, because you learned a ton. You worked really hard. You found out how tough you were, or how strong you were, or how much you could really accomplish. And just because the test didn't give you the outcome you wanted, like, that's a different thing. And then with wrong, I like to say different. Because what I've learned by, like, kind of, getting kicked around in life, in my 40s, was that there's a lot of different ways to do things, Chris. There's a lot of different answers to the test. So what makes your answer right and my answer wrong, there isn't. And yeah, mathematics, 2 + 2 cannot equal 5. I get that. Certain laws of gravity. But in just about everything else, it's up to interpretation. And some of our greatest failures and our greatest wrongs, like even in my company, which is tech-based, are outcomes that we don't expect. Sometimes are our greatest software boons. There are, the quote unquote failures we have in creating something, and we create something new. My sister is a missile defense programmer, and, she gets different outcomes that turn out to rock. I mean, they protect our pilots. They protect the F-35, and they weren't the outcome the team was seeking. And if they got the outcome they wanted, it would have been great, but they got a different outcome, which technically could be listed as a failure, because it didn't meet the original objectives. So that failure actually became a rocket missile defense system. So I do think that we need to have these conversations with our kids, and we have to have them at the dinner table of what is the difference between an outcome you didn't want and a failure. Failure to me is you don't even try.
That is wonderful, Sandra. That is incredible parenting there. And I'm learning so much being on you guys' show. You guys use such great examples, both you and Robin. And this particular one I think is incredibly powerful. If you're right, I say again to parents, you don't have to do anything different than you're currently doing. And I don't want to make you wrong. What I want to share is something that I found for me is more effective. It may be different than what you're currently doing, or we may have some things in common. But if you turn it into an outcome and different, and you allow your kids to see you fail like you did, and you get up and you don't make it, you turn it into an outcome and you don't make it, here's what I learned from it. And they don't see you be crushed by it. What an example you give. I think it was Albert Schweitzer said there was 3 ways to parent. The first one was by example. Second one was by example, and the third was by example.
I was going to say we've got another break coming up, Chris, and okay. I know you want to wrap this up. And it is true. I think a challenge can either be a barrier or it can be an opportunity, and it all depends on what way you take it. Yeah. So, on the other side of the break, let's talk a bit about play, because I think there are times when we just say, oh, go off and play. I need a couple of minutes. But there's times when parents need to learn how to play too. And I'd love to bring the conversation into play. So stay right where you are. We'll be right back with Chris Nielson after this. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out at militarymomtalkradio.com or find us on Twitter and Facebook. Our shows are available on iTunes anytime from 0-100 hours to 23:59. For now, stay right where you are. There's more Military Mom Talk Radio after these messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Did you know that the average teenager drinks twice as much soda as milk? Since 1983, sugar consumption in the U.S. is up 28%. Why is that? There are several reasons, but one of the most common is soft drinks. 20-ounce beverages have become the norm, and it's not surprising to find that 43% of our sugar comes from drinks. Sugar is blamed for poor nutritional diets. USDA data shows that people whose diets are high in added sugar eat less calcium, fiber, iron, protein, and many other important nutrients. Fat-free foods are also a culprit. Since sugar is fat-free, many people tend to think it's okay to eat as much as they want. Remember that just because a food is fat-free does not mean that it's calorie-free also. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
It's merging never heard.
I always get a kick out of the warning labels companies attach to prevent lawsuits from the hooky-crooky of this world. A warning label on a dishwasher cautioned not to put any person in the unit. Speaking of dishwashers, one product warning on a television remote control read, "Not dishwasher safe." That's too bad because we know how dirty the remote control gets. In fact, we press the buttons even harder when we know the battery is dead. What are we, part of the ridiculati? A warning on a baby stroller read, "Remove child before folding." Here's one for the blunderbusses and popinjays among us. A label on a letter opener read, "Safety goggles recommended." Call me snarky, but any society that needs this many disclaimers has too many lawyers, pettifoggers, and snollygasters.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we're visiting with Chris Nielson, and I'm juggling the ball over here. I got some kids coming home from their, field trip, and they're calling me on the air going, Miss Beck, our mom's not here. And I always told these kids, if your parents forget you, call me, I'll come get you. So if I suddenly disappear, you'll know I can't reach their parents.
Well, good luck there.
Yeah, good luck with that. So if my phone is buzzing, I apologize. But, one of the things that is really important is, and I'm just going to say this because here's a perfect example of it, is there is a parenting barrier, and everybody who comes in my household knows that at the end of the day, yes, ma'am, right away, ma'am, anything you say, ma'am, is the only acceptable answer in certain scenarios. Everywhere else, you're welcome to talk to me about your thoughts and feelings, and laying the groundwork that your kids can come to you, or in this case, other people's kids can come to you in times of need is really simple. You just tell them, if you're in a jam, you call me. Or if you're having a problem, tell me. I'm not going to get mad. I may not like it, but I'll help you figure it out. I'll help you walk through it. You're not alone. I think if parents could say that to their kids and know that we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to, Chris, I wrote down, I'm going to praise my kids for working hard more than for their abilities. I'm going to put that in my little tool bag over here. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's approachability, it's authenticity, and it's putting that guard down that you don't have to have all the answers. You can figure it out as you go along. You can be wrong as a parent. Nobody's going to fall apart. Hopefully nobody will die. But you can be these things, and that also allows your kid or other kids to come to you so you can have fun with them. Like the one thing my mom said to me is she's like, everybody's like, oh, you're going to have a family. It's going to cost so much money. It's going to be so much work. You're going to lose your personal life. And my mom said to me, you will never, rest in peace, Mom, you will never laugh more and you will never have more fun than you will with your own children and their friends.
Oh, wow. Your mom set a great example. And you just shared some incredible wisdom again that I'd just like to point out from maybe a slightly different direction is that we were never meant to raise kids on our own. That's not how it happened. It was by a whole village or tribe or multiple people or elders or aunts, uncles. We're all around to raise kids, this modern day raising of kids. No wonder parents are overwhelmed.
Oh, my gosh.
It's one person trying to do the job a whole tribe used to do. Mm-hmm. And you turned yourself into a mini tribe.
Yes, she did.
I so love that. And you offered, and so many things, so many pieces of wisdom came out of what you just said. So you actually created a bigger world for your kids and your friends' kids, the kids of your friends. So they knew there was another adult that cared about them. I always wanted for my daughter that she knew just lots of people loved and cared about her. And then the other incredible thing you said is that you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
What a gift, again, because no one has all the answers.
Right.
The parents that fake and pretend like they have all the answers, what a miserable place to be.
Yeah. How can you ever live up to that expectation if that's the case?
You can't. You got to be a fake. You got to be a fake to live there instead of authentic, real, honest, like you said. And those you just are demonstrating by incredible example there.
When Sandra was talking about enjoying children, I think one of the things that I wanted to bring into the conversation was talking about play. I think so many times we're parents feel that they have to be on a separate level, that it's okay, that yes, you can get down on the floor and play, but on a different level, talking a little bit more about play Chris, you talked once in an article that if a parent needs to get a child to do something, come on, we've got to go, and the kid just immediately crumbles and say, oh, do we have to? Do I have to do that? Instead, you have a different approach on getting kids to be a little bit more cooperative, and I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I could talk about play all day, and I actually believe, play will, even as adults, will change your life. I've started playing improv as an adult, and it completely changed my life. Now I do improv training for adults and for all kinds of things. But play as a parent is so powerful. When some parents can yell at their kids, shame their kids, give their kids a silent treatment, order them over and over to do something, or which will take a ton of time and effort, feel bad doing it, or you could just turn it into a game and play with them. Like cleaning their room. Did you clean your room yet? No? Okay, great. We get to turn on the music, and I'm going to help you, and we can get this thing done in a few minutes. And it's fun and enjoyable. The dishes can be fun via play. And like you said, your example, getting a child to go someplace and they don't want to go, make it in an adventure. A friend of mine, I think in the one article, turned it into a spy mission, a shopping trip. So you can turn it into almost any game. You will laugh and have fun during the process, and your kids will now have positive associations with it. I have a confession to make. I still don't like making my bed because of the way my dad made me feel bad about it every time. I had the stubborn streak in me, so I said, fine, I'm not gonna make it. But if he would have made it a game, I'd probably be joyfully making my bed because it was associated with so many positive images.
Well, and I'm back now. I've handled my kids' stuff. We arranged for rides, but one of the things too, when you talk about game, like, and especially if you have boys, and especially if they're competitive, do not ever underestimate the power of the race. Who's going to do whatever it is first, and that's a big one in my household because I have the biggest room and I have the most clothes. Obviously, I'm the girl in the house, and there's just all boys, my dad and my two kids. So I can clean my room faster, like girlfriend wins, and I'm like, you got beat by girl. And, but it's fun, and it's not meant to put them down. It's not meant to belittle. And, when you can't get your kid out the door and they get older and they start throwing a tantrum, first of all, cell phones are the master of the universe. You take those away, that's like all powerful. Second, all powerful is make sure you have a changeable Wi-Fi password, because when my kids really act up, you can earn the Wi-Fi password back. And Chris, if I was your mom, I would say, with my sparkly eyes, what did you call her? She had wonderful sparkle eyes. Sunshine eyes. So her sunshine eyes, I would say, okay, with my sunshine eyes, you can have the password back when you do X, Y, and Z. And, it's like total gold. But the other thing is sometimes...
It does work. It does work. I just have a slightly different take on that. I would try to use those as little as possible.
Yes.
Taking away phones, even the threat of taking away phones, because they're so addicting. If your teenager has them and is using them, or preteen has them or using, they're incredibly addicting. I would set the rules of engagement with your phone up ahead of time.
Yes, because
if you can.
What is a phone loss for a day? What is a phone loss for a week? What is a phone loss for the month? And you're never getting that little thing back. So letting them know the parameters when you give them the phone is huge, because then there's not the unfairness. It's like, you're unfair. No, I'm not. Read the contract you signed when I gave you the phone.
I would try not to use the phone as a consequence. I know it works really well because it's highly motivating to them. I work more on natural consequences. And the phone is a right and responsibility. So, they could lose it for certain periods of time for certain things. But if you do a losing it forever thing, if you actually want to implement that, they may go buy their own burner phone.
Oh, that's true. Mine aren't old enough yet they can't drive. They don't have their own money. So,
they are clever people, and they can find a way. What I found when my daughter was born, I deeply respected her just as she was. I actually saw her as equally worthy to me. And I think one of the things I teach in the play is an all for one, one for all family. If you guys all know you have each other's back, you all have each other's best interest in mind, it makes amazing things happen. And connection And that mindset, one of the biggest things you can do to help your kids not get into drugs, alcohol, or other risky behaviors. And everyone
matters, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the reason I left my marriage. I didn't matter. I stopped dating. He didn't. Same. You've heard the story a million times. But I didn't matter. And I vowed to my kids, when they were, they were 3 months old and 2 years old when I filed for divorce, that they would always matter. Like, that's the other thing is, as screwball as your kids' opinions seem at the time, patiently listening to them, and even though it's not your adult mind talking and it's their kid mind talking, listening, like really listening. Like, I listen to you, Chris, Robin, you listen to me, we all listen to each other, we listen to adults, and I see so many parents not listening to your kid. And if you just stop for a second, put your own phone down, and listen to them, they'll tell you what they need. And yeah, you might go around the mulberry bush a few times and, hear some 10th grade or 10-year-old vocabulary doing it, but you can come down to certain conclusions. They're hurt.
Oh, Robin and Sandra, you both touched on this, listening to your kids. And I actually...
we were talking about it in the break.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I totally agree that... that is one of the best things you can do. And I teach, parents are out there going, how do I get my kids to listen? How do I get my kids to listen? I said, I've got the total secret that absolutely works every time, not always the first time, but you demonstrate what you want to see. Yes. And you're right. Everyone wants to matter, feel heard, feel seen. And if you give that gift to your child, you are giving them a powerful gift. If you set your phone down or even turn it off, so they see you turn it off and you see you pay attention to them and know that they matter and hear their opinion, even if it's different. I love when my daughter convinced me to change my mind, because she could see that actually she wasn't just talking against a brick wall. She had the ability to, her opinion mattered just as much as mine. And if I agreed with it, I loved when she was right and I was wrong.
If she can, my kids can construct a compelling argument of why they should do something that I don't think they should do, then that's on the table.
Right. And again, that is, if we bring it down to it, if our kids know that they matter, they're seen and heard.
Yeah.
If you just bring that, I guess I call a compass question, are you connecting or are you disconnecting? When someone's seen, heard, and mattered, you're obviously connecting with them. And when you're connected with someone, they want to do what you're asking them to do. Mm-hmm. The stuff I share with parenting and the stuff you're sharing here makes parenting actually easy, more fun, more enjoyable. And you're right, it can be some of the most joy-filled, laugh-filled, fun-filled moments of your life.
That's awesome, Chris. We've got to wrap it there. Thanks so much. Chris Nielson. Find him online, chrisnielson.com. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you both.
Thanks for tuning in to Military Mom Talk Radio. Want more information? Check us out at militarymomtalkradio.com or find us on iTunes for more than 200 free episodes. Drop us an email or find us on Facebook. We are looking forward to another great discussion. We hope you'll join us on Military Mom